I think it says a lot. When I finished my PhD in 2019, it was right before COVID. And I remember applying for all these, jobs in higher education. And I have a background as an administrator, but never really as like a full-time faculty. And I'm like, I would love to teach, do research and scholarship, all the stuff that academia says that we should be doing. And I'm applying and applying and applying. And I know I'm a good quality candidate.
Right.
I couldn't get a single callback, a single interview, and so to some degree it is by choice because I'm now choosing, you know what, I'm just not going to go work full-time in academia anywhere. Right. There was also like, I didn't want that to be my choice, but I had no other choice because I have to survive. I got to eat. You know what I mean? I still got to eat. And so I'm like, how can I eat and survive on the scholarship that I've created? And for me, I'm like, the scholarship that I've created has always come from community. The community got my back. I know they love me better than academia does, but also know it's people in academia like you who love me. Right?
So it's almost like, I know for me, it's like leveraging the resources that are there.
Yes.
To bust things wide open for my students.
Can you share more? 'Cause I'm curious, what leverages have you had to put, what resources have you had to finesse or put in place to provide that for your students?
What
does that look like?
I think it goes back to that whole translation part, right? So depending on whatever's trendy at the moment, right? So like back in 2015, 2016, the Nike girls campaign, right? If I'm looking at my girls advocacy, girls' rights, our human rights work, girls were popular. There was a whole, Michelle Obama had a whole girls initiative, right? Because anything that's marginalized, it's almost like, they come to the middle and then they go back out, right? They're called to the middle when it's trendy and popping. And then you get your time and then you gotta go. And so for me, that's always like but for some of us, this is real life.
Yeah.
It's not because it's trendy or because there are resources suddenly allocated to it. Like I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the DEI initiatives and things like that. Now, in some campuses, I know they're just calling it by a different name.
Yeah.
Even the same
shifting the language. Yeah.
And so it's thinking about those kind of things. And at what point is the compromise too much? It's back to the question of ethics, right? And I'm like, at what point I can call it right now, there's a big push for career-centered learning objectives on syllabi. There's funding for social entrepreneurship and different kinds of things like this, right? But they want it in my curriculum. And I'm like, at what point do I say, ooh, there's a pot of money, because we came up hungry. I don't like leaving money on the table. So I'm gonna apply for everything, But at what point do I say, you know what? That is asking for too much. That's too much compromise. But for me, I'm like, y'all got student, and this is like back to being jack of all trades. You need a cultural program, we got you. You need a poet, we got you. You need a scholar, we got you. You want a little bit of everything, we got you, right? So it's like finding the, I think it's back, we live in the in-between, right? It's back to that tension. So now that the Nike campaign is over and girls are not popular anymore, girls' rights isn't trending anymore, to get money, to get funding, to get support for this gigantic campaign we do every single year has become harder and harder and harder and harder. So it's like, can you remix it until there's nothing of the original left? And then at what cost? At what cost? So I think about that in terms of my classroom space. I think because I think at our core, Tony, we're creatives. Yeah. Right. And if I'm not creating, it's going to get stale. It's going to get bitter. It's going to be unhealthy. So I think as long as I'm able to create something with my students that seek social change or better or healing.
I love that.
And that's going to look different depending on who's in the mix that day in class.
I love this because what I hear so much about what you're saying is, because I think my question was around, how have you sort of leveraged assets and maneuver resources? And I think that what I'm realizing in this moment is like, you recognize that you are an asset, right? You see what I'm saying? Like it's
and
right? And your students also. I will leave it on this regard, but I think that what I hear you saying is like, I am a multidimensional being. I have multiple I can write a rhyme. I can write you a check. Like what I'm like what you need me to do. And like, I am the resource that's being put into these conditions. And this is not like a tyrant dictator kind of thing. It's not like I'm the one, but it's sort of like, you realize that within you are all these gifts, all these different, and you realize that that's what these students need in the classroom. And so like, what I hear is you learning how to wield your power, your influence, your multidimensional selves for their
Because that's the thing. Like, I think about that in terms of like even marketing. Like, I've had a lot of people like marketing myself as a scholar, because it's all an industry, right? Like marketing myself as a poet, as an artist, as a performer. But it's like, to what degree do I have to, just because I can doesn't mean I am.
Yes.
And even if I give you the cheat code, the blueprint, it ain't gonna be me.
Yeah.
And I think I think if I know that about me and what I bring, I can teach my students that. Because that's a knowledge of self.
Knowledge of self, yeah.
Right? That's a knowledge of self, and that's something I've learned in part through a classroom, but never only through a classroom. Yeah. I think people like us, educational spaces, are beyond the classroom always.
For sure.
But just like me being a scholar is only good because I'm a poet, right? And me being a poet gets better and richer because I'm a scholar. Same is true for my learning environments. What I learned around a kitchen table or at the altar at church or sitting in a graduate school classroom, they need each other. Yeah. To be creative.
And you need really fantastic, dope pedagogues. You need teachers. You need people. I'm like, my mother was one of the best teachers ever. Right. You know what I mean? Even without like a, traditional, like my mother never sat me down like in a formal classroom, but that woman absolutely taught me about survival, taught me about safety, taught me about how to protect myself in this way. I think and that teaching wasn't in a formalized space. And so I think you're really onto something. We think about the informality and the formality of education. And so while you work within a formal educational space, there's so many of us that also work in education, but in these informal spaces. And you've done that as well with your work at the UN, the nonprofit organizations. And so I think so much about like how they work together. Right. There's this relationship with like the out of school time and the in school time, but it has so much to say about the teachers, the educators, who are the folks facilitating the instruction. Supplying the curriculum, evaluating the learning objectives, like doing the assessment. Like it says something about like who those individuals are. And I think about someone like you and even someone like me, who I'm like, the way we approach that, I don't know, it goes against the green, it just goes, it rubs differently.
So let me ask you about that. Okay. Let me ask you about that because like, surviving, being a college student in order for social mobility.
Yeah.
So now, speaking of leverage, right? Now you're a success.
Yeah.
You are a mainstream success.
I'm outside.
You are outside all the way, right?
Yeah.
So do you run into friction? Have the expectations of the community changed for you?
Great question. I don't think, if anything, it's not that the expectations of community has changed for me. And when I say community, I'm specifically thinking about like my family right now. I think that they somehow believe that there's a bit of a hierarchy, right? In terms of, I got to figure out, I don't know what the hierarchical structure is, because I don't think it's about intelligence at all. Although my grandmother says things like, oh, grandson, I wish I had your book smarts. I never did well on my tests, like things like that. And I'm sort of like, yeah, but you're still a scholar, grandma. Right. But I think so much what happens now is they say, oh, I didn't want to contact you about this because you're so busy. Right. I don't want to tell you about this tragedy because I know how busy you are. I don't want to disrupt what you got going on. I see the way you moving, son. I see how you moving, grandbaby. Like, I don't want to, pause. I don't want you to know that I had to get surgery. I don't want you to know that such had an accident or somebody passed away. Like, I think that what happens is hierarchy of time. I think that they see themselves on like the lower end of a hierarchy and, in terms of the time.
Isn't it crazy that the very thing they pushed you to pursue has created a separation?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, and I know about you because I would love to know about the you as well. But I think that for me, that's something that I continue to regularly wrestle with. My family, my aunt loves to call me Dr. Nephew. My grandmother, Dr. Grandson, and I'm like, yeah, and like, I love all that. But I'm also like, I'm still me. I'm still your baby boy. I'm still a little knucklehead down the street. Like I'm still, and I think that for me, that's probably where the rub comes is remaining grounded. Right, remaining, like, I think grounded. I think there's something to be said about, like, keeping your feet on the actual, like, ground where, like, everybody else is. You're right, and realizing that hierarchy can't exist here.
There's no hierarchy in a cipher.
Hey! There's no hierarchy in a cipher. I love that, Doc. I love that. Say more.
I'm thinking about what you were saying about time.
Yes.
Also.
Yes.
And that's something we talked about earlier today. I'm like, time is not linear.
It's not.
It's circular. We've been here before.
Mm.
We've been here before.
Mm.
Looks different now, you know, but
Mm.
we've been here before. This is not new.
Mm.
It's not new territory. It's not new time, but we wouldn't be able to be where we are in the future without the past that we've had.
I love that.
So we can't sacrifice any of it.
Yeah. History informs the present.
Yeah.
I tell young people this, and not just young people, but quite a bit. So I'm like, yo, and this, even today when we were talking about hip hop, right? It's like, yo, there's an entire cultural history, right? That sort of needs to be spoken about, so folks are informed about sort of what's going on. I just think so much about like how, at least right now, we live in this day and age where we have so much access to information, right? Bookstores are popular everywhere. You got Google, you got the internet, you got them. Folks can like get access to information in so many different kinds of ways.